Namaste. Today we have Mr. Bal.K. Gupta ji at World Hindu News Hindu Talk Show. It's a privilege to have Bal.K. Gupta ji at Hindu Talk Show. And let me quickly introduce you to Bal.K. Gupta ji. He was born in Mirpur, Pakistan, occupied Kashmir, and is one of the survivors of notorious concentration camp called Alibeg prison. This is his eyewitness account of the Pakistani invasion of Mirpur in 1947, where about 20,000 Hindus and Sikhs were mercilessly killed, including 24 of his close relatives. Bal.K. Gupta ji and his family were held captive in Alibeg prison along with about 5,000 Hindus and Sikh prisoners. He was one of the surviving 1,600 prisoners that were liberated by International Committee of the Red Cross in 1948. At the time of the invasion, he was 10 years old. His memoirs are supported by many eyewitness accounts of fellow prisoners and by research conducted on many independent historical documents. Bal.K. Gupta interviewed many survivors by telephone and in person in India, England, United States of America. Bal.K. Gupta ji vividly narrates the atrocities committed on helpless Hindus and Sikh men, women and children during the partition of India in 1947. Bal.K. Gupta ji is a retired professional engineer and live in USA with his family. It's our privilege to have you, Bal.K. Gupta ji, at Hindu Talk Show. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you very much, Rahul ji, for interviewing me and coming all the way from Houston to Atlanta. And I thank World Hindu News and you in particular for taking time to come all the way and interview me. I will try to describe horrible conditions at the time of partition in India and in particular in Kashmir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bal.K. Gupta ji, and let me start with the first question. As a survivor of Alibeg concentration camp, how can you say it's a concentration camp? Basically, the camp concentration idea and the terminology started from the Adolf Hitler concentration camps that he installed during the World War II.
Okay, I call it Alibeg prison as a concentration camp because the killing of Hindu and Sikh civilians were done in the same fashion as it was done during the Nazi regime during World War II. Many people may not have used this term for the other camps, but the enormity of the killing which happened and the people who survived, it is so big that it was even worse than those Jewish Nazi concentration camp for the Jews in Germany. And on top of that, here the killing was on the same pattern. Every day, men were taken outside the prison and either shot dead or thrown into the river, or beheaded and thrown into the river. Second attack was that the food was basically, which was given, was contaminated or sometime poisoned, with the result that the children and the women and the old people started dying of malnutrition and food poisoning. So I think, in my opinion, using the terminology concentration camp is very valid.
The question was like concentration camp, Hitler deployed gas chambers and other machine for human extermination. Was it is relevant to the human suffering point of view or the industrial way of that execution of humans? are saying it is a concentration camp under Islamists in 1947.
Now, in this concentration camp, the only difference was there were no gas chambers, there were no gas furnaces. However, the killing was done almost every day. About 50 men were taken out and shot dead. And this happened almost for about more than a month. So if you add like 50 people being killed every day times 30, is 1,500 people were shot dead or they were slaughtered, just like what is happening in Islamic State in Middle East now.
Okay.
Okay, and the second thing, the second way of killing was give the rest of the people a contaminated food, particularly the flour was mixed with copper sulfate, which we could see the traces.
Okay.
But we were starving, so even a starving person eats poisoned food or contaminated food. And that caused terrible dysentery and diarrhea. The people, there was no medical help, so the young children started dying, the old men started dying. So another like 50 to 60 people would die every day inside the camp, and their dead bodies were thrown into a pit outside the camp.
Was the purpose for setting up that concentration camp, first, where was it exactly in today's geography, and was the purpose of the camp was to take all the Hindus and Sikhs and other minorities and exterminate them? That was the purpose, or to resettle them at other place, in your experience?
In my eyewitness account, basically it was set up to exterminate the Hindus and Sikhs of Mirpur, which is located in Jammu and Kashmir. Now this camp, the strategic location of this camp was such that it was only 2 miles from Pakistan border. It is presently in Pakistan occupied Kashmir, but at that time it was just a few miles from the international Pakistan border and Jammu and Kashmir border. So in case of any liberation effort, they could easily transfer the entire prisoners population to Pakistan in just maybe about 30 minutes. Now, why I say that this camp was set up to exterminate Hindu and Sikh minorities of that area is why the killing started from the day one, and it went on. So if it was intermittent, I could agree that some Pakistani officer who was in charge, he was mad, he wanted to kill for just pleasure.
Right.
But it was a planned thing that every day they had to exterminate or kill that many people. And the second was give them the dirty food and they will die of disease.
Okay.
And that's what is my theory. And when we were arrested by Pakistan Army in Mirpur city, the total population of Hindus and Sikhs was 20,000.
Okay.
But when we were liberated, the people who survived was only 1,600. So that shows that it was a planned genocide. The term these days is used is the genocides of Hindus and Sikhs in Pakistan occupied Kashmir.
So basically population went from 20,000 to 1,600 in just how many months?
We were arrested on November 25th, 1947.
Okay.
And we were liberated on...
You can guess some...
March 20th, 1948.
March.
So basically in 5 months, close to 18,000 people.
So 3,000 a month, somewhat more than 4,000 a month. That means more than 150 people a day.
That's right.
They were getting, somehow dying by killing, poisoning, or other atrocities.
But one thing, I forgot to mention, besides the killing, slaughter, killing due to food poisoning, there was another reason of the reduction in the population. All the young women, they were kidnapped.
Okay.
One day, I mean, in the first 15 days, all the young women were taken away by the Pathan mercenaries from Pakistan, or even some Pakistan army people.
Okay.
And it is so sad for me to recollect those things, that some of these young girls, they were sold in Pakistan for 20 rupees. Now 20 rupees at that time was equivalent to maybe $10. Now, and I was eyewitness to the kidnapping. The girls were being dragged from the arms of their mothers and fathers. They were crying that save us. And if any parent tried to help her, the Pakistani Pathans or the Pakistani soldiers will shoot him dead. Now, it's very sad that I saw the kidnapping of cousin of my wife and killing of her grandmother. Her grandmother tried to protect her, and this Pathan from Pakistan, he shot her dead. She just slumped, and that girl went crying. At that time, I didn't know who that girl was, till my wife told that her cousin was kidnapped and her grandmother was killed. And in this process, I did see many people being shot dead in front of my eyes. So those were traumas which I carried for a very long time, till I was able to unload it in the form of my book.
Indeed, a very heart-wrenching incidents that happened that time. What political, economic and social conditions in India and Jammu Kashmir were there? We have read history, but just in brief, would you like to explain?
Say, at that time, in 1947, India's population was 400 million, and United India's population was 400 million, which there was 100 million Muslims, 300 million Hindus and Sikhs. And unfortunately, India was partitioned into two countries, India and Pakistan. But the entire Muslim population did not go to Pakistan. So probably Pakistan was home to about maybe 50 to 60 million Muslims, whereas the entire Hindu and Sikh population was ethnically cleansed from Pakistan, and they were forced to leave Pakistan for India. Now, according to historical figures, 14.5 million people moved from India to Pakistan and Pakistan to India. But the number of refugees coming from each country was, like Hindus and Sikhs from Pakistan was about 7.5 million, and Muslims going from India to Pakistan was about the same amount, 7 million. But the worst part, which never happened in the history of human being, is the civilians were in the forefront of killing each other. and total number of Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs killed in Pakistan and India, the estimates are about 1 to 2 million. There are no hard figures written, but the historical point of view, they give a big window, 1 to 2 million.
So you said, Bal.K ji, that is of course an interesting and factual figures. We saw, you said that Mirpur, so the entire population of, was it a city, village or a district?
Now before I come to Mirpur, I have to give you a little background of Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir in 1947 was a Muslim majority state. It had 2.5 million Muslims and 1.5 million Hindus and Sikhs. But due to Pakistan, there was no ill will between Hindus and Muslims in 1947. And I can tell you, Jammu and Kashmir practically remained an independent state. It did not join Pakistan, it did not join India. So Hindus and Muslims were on very good terms. And in Mirpur, on 14th of August, Muslims celebrated Pakistan's Independence Day, and Hindus and Sikhs celebrated 15th August, India's Independence Day. So I was eyewitness to the celebration of the birth of both the countries. I saw Muslims putting Pakistan's flag on their house or their businesses, and Hindus and Sikhs putting tricolor on their businesses. Okay. But in October, 22nd of October 1947, Pakistan invaded Kashmir. Pakistani army, along with Pathan mercenaries from northwest Pakistan, they invaded, and now the bad blood started, and it was basically a massacre of Hindus and Sikhs in whichever city came under Pakistan occupation. And Mirpur was encircled from October 22nd till November 25th. Maharaja's army did hold against the Pakistani invasion for about a month, till they were overpowered. They didn't have enough of resources and ammunition and guns, and Pakistan army had put an entire division to defeat Mirpur, along with Pathan's mercenaries. And on 25th November, Mirpur fell to Pakistan invasion. Now, population, Mirpur was the third largest city in Kashmir. It had population of 25,000 in 1947. Only 3,000 were Muslims, whereas rest 22,000 were Hindus and Sikhs. A large number of refugees came from Pakistan. They were part of this 23,000. About 5,000 refugees from Pakistan, part of Punjab. They had relatives in Mirpur, so they, instead of going to India, they came to Mirpur. And this is what happened to. It was basically an holocaust on the entire Hindu and Sikh population, because when Jammu and Kashmir army was defeated, there was nobody to protect them, and it was nothing but a slaughter of defenseless civilian Hindus and Sikhs.
So basically, once the Pakistani army encroached in Mirpur and the defenses of the Maharaja and Indian armed forces were neutralized, so the Hindus were asked by speakers to come out and gather at a place, or how exactly the concentration of Hindus started after that?
See, it was all the young volunteers of RSS and the Sikh, who, once they realized that army, Jammu and Kashmir and Indian army was defeated, they realized that it's going to be nothing but massacre. So they went from door to door and informed the people, come on, get out and leave, move towards Indian part of Kashmir. And whatever they could do, or word of mouth was sent through the bull horns, and so whosoever could get the message, they started marching towards the east, where the closest Indian army had arrived was a town called Nowshera, which was almost about 50 miles walking distance.
Okay.
So the refugees started gathering in army cantonment, and then they started following a country path.
Okay.
Because the road from Mirpur to Nowshera was already occupied by Pakistan army.
Okay.
And so the only way was to go through the cross-country paths, and somebody started, and then people started walking, and it was almost 5-6 miles long caravan that is described by an Indian Air Force aeroplane who was monitoring the exodus. But unfortunately, Indian aeroplane or Indian Air Force could not drop any leaflets or the maps which could guide the refugees.
Right.
And so we started marching on 25th of November. I gathered with my family. My great-grandfather refused to leave. He locked his door. He says, I'm not going to leave. And he stayed inside. And next day, when the artillery fire from Pakistan hit his house, he was burnt alive. So same thing happened to my grandmother and my uncle. They were in the west part of city, which was a Muslim majority area. That was the first area which fell to Pakistani army. And my grandmother and uncle, they were also burnt alive in their house. But rest of the family, along with my mother and uncles and aunts, we moved towards the army cantonment. And army cantonment had the trenches.
Okay.
So we had to jump the trench to go to walk towards Indian Trail. My wife, my mother, she had some ailment in her leg, so she couldn't jump, and that was the very sad moment in my life. She put me and my brother under the care of my aunt and says goodbye to us. Well, we won't see each other. And she just sat on the other side of the trench, and we jumped the trenches and walked along with the aunt. But during that, crossing the trenches, some Pakistani soldier had already reached nearby, and they put the machine gun and they were firing. And many people, I saw many dead bodies, people getting hit by the bullet and falling in the trench or dangling in the barbed wires which were around that army camp. And so we kept on walking along with the rest of the caravan and reached, we had hardly walked about 3 or 4 miles and reached a well about 8 p.m. We had not eaten the entire day. We were thirsty. So there was a well, and we children were more thirsty, and we sat and but there was no way of getting the water out of, there was no bucket to get water out of the well. So what my uncle did is he took off his turban, dropped the turban in the well, brought, the turban got drenched, so he brought that, and we slowly and slowly started quenching our thirst. By the time we had drank a little water, all of a sudden this Pakistani soldier who were pursuing, they came at about 9 p.m. They started shooting, and we all got stuck near that well. Nobody could go any further towards the Indian side. But luckily, 3 of my uncles, they left their wives and children in behind, and they jumped and went towards, they started running towards the Indian side, and finally they reached India after 3-4 days walk, but we were all doomed. And by the time in the morning, you know, these Muslim soldiers or Pakistani soldiers and local Muslim leaders, they convinced, hey, if any one of you has guns or swords, just surrender us, we are not going to harm you. And though our number was much larger, we were about 5,000 people, and they were hardly maybe a couple of hundred, but they were all armed, and they were soldiers. Whereas, you know, the people in this caravan, or this part of the caravan,
right,
some had the guns, some had pistols,
yeah,
some had the swords, but they got carried away with the sweet talk, and they dropped their arms without any fighting, which is very sad that we had a big number, larger number. We had at least we had something to fight. Instead of fighting to death, people got carried away with their assurances, no, we'll send you to India safely and all that.
Okay.
And we got duped, and it was a big treason. I have described in detail all these events in my book, but you know, I'm giving a synopsis. That next day, when in the morning, when those guys appeared, they were all armed. They picked up all the surrendered arms, and then they ordered us to move back towards Mirpur, not towards India. And that's when people realized that they have been cheated.
Okay.
And next day was 26th of November. We were kept in a village in the big grounds, and 25th of November, December are extremely cold in Kashmir.
Okay.
So we were all made to sit in the open, no blanket, nothing of the sort. The whole night we were freezing. The only thing which kept us warm was that we picked up some hay from the nearby and lit the bonfire to keep us warm. But that was not the only story. The story is that is when the kidnapping of the young women started. All these Pathans who had come, they were given assurances by Pakistan authorities, if you win Kashmir, take away the women, take away their money, and give us the land. Land belongs to Pakistan, you take away women and money. So they started kidnapping the young women, and they were crying. We could hear it was, by the night time, probably hundreds of women had already been kidnapped. And at night time, the other thing happened is one of the commanders of the Pakistan army, he laid a big sheet of cloth on the ground, sat on a chair and table, and just made one announcement: whosoever has money and gold, just deposit it here in the on the sheet, and if somebody doesn't deposit and it is found later on, we'll shoot him. So even I had 500 rupees in my pocket. My mother had put it. So same thing, 500 rupees with my younger brother. That 500 rupees was equivalent to like $250 of that time, which could be more than $100,000 of today. And those Pakistanis were so surprised that almost within no time they had close to about a ton of gold and millions of rupees. So they didn't come for searching because they already looted. They got there as a booty more than what they expected.
Right.
And so the looting and kidnapping started. So far there was no killing.
Okay.
Okay, but the only killing on that night was they caught a hold of some young Sikh youth and they tortured them, hurled them around with their long hair, and till those Sikh guys became kind of unconscious and they killed them. But rest of the Hindus were so far spared.
So basically, you said the entire background of what happened, and now you ever saw your mother again?
I met we were reunited with our mother in.
That is all right.
Okay, I think in 1954.
So your mother was
Yeah.
Alive.
Yes,
Okay.
she was in another camp, and you know, in Mirpur city, they set up a camp for some old and invalid people, which was not known way till 1954. Somebody informed the Red Cross, and she was liberated at that time, along with another 20, 30 old women and old and sick women.
Continuing Bal.K ji on that, you said that Hindu Sikh women were kidnapped by the Pathans. All the gold and money was taken away by Pakistan military and the other elements, and also Hindus were cheated that they surrender their weapons and they would be allowed to go to India without any harm, and instead Hindus surrendered their weapons and whatever the defense items they had, and they were asked to come back to Pakistan and face persecution. What happened after that?
So on the 27th of November, we were moved from this village to another. We were not taken back to Mirpur, but we didn't know where we are being taken. So, but we could, from a distance, we could see half of Mirpur city was burning because of the, Pakistani artillery had, most of the houses were made of wood. So Pakistani artillery had already destroyed a lot of homes, and we could see big plumes. But on the other hand, we also saw some of the looters.
Yeah.
They were looting our homes in Mirpur and bringing looted stuff on their horses, donkeys, and camels, which were passing right in front of our eyes, and nobody could say anything that this is mine or not, because we were so scared of the previous night's thing that many people were still crying that they had lost their daughters, and the Sikhs were so scared that what they had seen to some of young people. So next day we were marched to another village which was called Tatal, and we reached there at the night time or in the evening, and there the leadership of Pakistani army or Pakistani captors changed. It was a new set of soldiers, new set of Pathans who appeared, and the previous one probably they had enough of loot, so they didn't want to do any more dirty work. So these people took over and they did the same thing. They laid down a table, chair, and one guy stood up and he said, well, whatever you guys have, lay it down. He didn't know that we had already been robbed. But still some people had something they had hidden in their shoes or somewhere. So they took out those things and gave it to them. Though these people were not that much satisfied because, they didn't get enough of money. Now, the chilling announcement they made here was gut-wrenching. They made an announcement, all the Sikh men will be slaughtered. No Sikh will be spared alive. And amongst the Hindus, they said, well, whichever Muslim comes and tells that this Hindu had done harm to him, he will be killed. And all the young Hindus, particularly those who belong to Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, they will be killed. All the government officials will be killed. Government employees will be killed. So these are the announcements they made. But at the same time, the new set of Pathans, they started kidnapping the young women. And here I saw killing of a renowned journalist, Vipin Gupta. He was editor of a Urdu newspaper.
Okay.
And one Mirpur Muslim, he came along with some bodyguards. He pulled him aside, and I heard it. Says, "Hey, you son of a this,"
Right.
and I'm going to shoot you. And the guy said, "Well, I am a journalist." He said, "No, no, you are a staunch Hindu,
Right.
and you used to write many articles against Muslims, and you will be the first one to be killed in daylight."
Okay.
And the guy said, Bipin Gupta said, "Well, I was a journalist. I don't have any malice against Muslims. I don't have a special, that thing against, against anybody. I was writing the facts. And as a journalist, I deserve protection."
Right.
He says, "Don't tell me all that." And he used all those kind of curse words. And he had 2 bodyguards with him. This guy's name was Alibeg. He was a leader of Muslim conference in Mirpur.
Okay.
So he knew who were, the Hindu leaders and all that. And he took the gun from his bodyguard and shot Vipin Gupta while he was still pleading
Okay.
forgiveness. And his son was sitting beside him. Vipin Gupta's wife had already been kidnapped along with his 2 daughters. Now, this was the first killing I saw at a close range. He may have been only maybe 10 yards away from me.
Okay.
And when we reached the village,
So sorry to interrupt you, Bal.K ji. So they Pakistan military categorically said that whoever is associated with RSS will get executed.
that's right.
And the Mirpur, who you said the Council of Mirpur Muslim leader, he helped the Pakistani military
To identify Sangh leaders
Okay.
and also the bureaucrats who were government officials.
Okay.
He also identified Hindu leaders who were even not connected with Sangh,
Right.
but other Congress party
Okay.
and other. But since he was a Muslim leader, in the leader in India or Pakistan, if you belong to one party, you know the leaders of the other party.
Right.
And so he was instrumental. And this Alibeg later on did a lot of atrocities, even in Alibeg. But
So-
yeah, please go ahead.
So from that we understand that the person who was with the community, within the Hindu-Muslim community during the peaceful era, when Pakistan army invaded that area and took Hindus refuge, the same Muslim community leader allied with Pakistan army and start shortlisting the Hindus who are associated with RSS or non-RSS Hindus, Congress, other political Hindus, religious Hindus and journalists, editors likewise.
That's very true, because what it is, after 1947, the loyalties had totally changed. Hindus and Sikhs wanted to join India. Hindus and Sikhs of Kashmir wanted to join India, and Muslims of Kashmir wanted to join Pakistan. So the only way of Muslim leaders to achieve this was to exterminate or ethnically cleanse as many Hindus and Sikhs as they could. And this is, in this way, when Mirpur Hindus were all arrested, 20,000, somebody had to, from the Muslims, had to come and identify the leaders. Once the leadership is killed, the rest of the prisoners will be demoralized.
Right.
And that's what Alibeg. It's surprising, the second or third day he appeared. So obviously there was a plan already in place that we should be arrested, not sent to India,
Right.
and exterminated or massacred.
How was the Alibeg's relationship with the Hindu community before the Mirpur and the Pakistan army invasion?
As I have mentioned, that before 15th of August, all the even if some majority of Hindus were like Congress
Right.
supporters, and some young people were Sangh supporters, and Muslims were like members of Muslim conference.
Right.
But there was no ill feeling. They all used to buy this food from the same Muslim stores or Hindu
Right.
stores. Nobody was doing any discrimination that I don't have to buy this from Muslim
Okay.
store or this. And as far as I am concerned, I used to buy my school stationeries from a Muslim book depot. So my grandmother and my uncles, they used to live in a Muslim majority area. There was no problem. Even I used to visit sometimes, like Eid, they will distribute some sweets in masjid.
Right.
And we young kids will go. And when it was a Diwali, Muslim kids will come to the temples and eat laddus.
Right.
See, so that was the thing. But this Pakistan invasion totally changed the mindset,
Okay.
because by not doing ethnic cleansing, they could not accomplish the accession of Kashmir to Pakistan. And this is the way they started. And unfortunately, I'm sure there were some good Muslims who did not want to hurt Hindus. They did not come and take part in looting.
Right.
They did not take part in kidnapping, and but they somehow were powerless in that power game in 1947. Because if one Muslim said Pakistan Zindabad, other will not say anything.
Okay.
Will keep quiet. And that's the mindset. Politically, Muslims of Jammu and Kashmir had been brainwashed into joining Pakistan. राज करेगा खालसा आखी रहे ना कोई, पार होए तो मिलेंगे, बचे शर्म तो होए. Means if we die in the battlefield, we'll meet in the heaven. And if we are saved, we are in the service of God. So those are the lessons we need to remember. In our lifetime, in just about 20 years ago, Kashmiri Pandits, 500,000 Kashmiri Pandits were driven out from the Kashmir Valley. It was in independent India, secular, democratic India. India was ruled by a Hindu Prime Minister. Maybe he is a secular, but he is a Hindu. He was a Hindu Prime Minister. How come the Kashmiri Pandits were driven out? So this is the lesson. 500,000 was a much bigger number than 20,000 helpless Hindus and Sikhs of Mirpur. 500,000 could have fought and not left the Kashmir. Now is the time that if they go back, they should fight. They should be kind of believe in Lord Krishna's lesson. Hey, if you have to die, you have to die. But this is if you die in battlefield, you go to heaven. That's what Lord Krishna is telling to Arjuna. And that is what is my thing. That do not, forget the past and learn from the mistakes. Prithviraj Chauhan forgave, what was his name? Muhammad Ghori many times. But the last time when Muhammad Ghori won, he did not forgive Prithviraj Chauhan. So these are the lessons we need to learn, that yes, don't get carried away by the false words. Bhagavad Gita doesn't tell you to get carried away from the adharmi. And that's what is my message. Of course, in my concentration camp in the Alibeg, I also met a few kind Muslims, and I have described their kindness in my book too. I'm not painting but when it is hijacked by the terrorist ideology, people should not give in to the false words and false promises. That is what is my advice.
Thank you, Bal.K ji, and indeed one of the most inspirational and thoughtful interview I ever had. I appreciate your time and for joining us and updating our audience about the real-time witness Hindus and Sikhs of Mirapur were and narrating their story. I thank you so much. There are no words to describe, as said earlier, but the advice you have said is far-sighted. Thank you, Bal.K ji.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste. One more thing I forgot to add is the sacrifices done by the Hindus and Sikhs of Pakistan occupied Kashmir till today have not been recognized by any government in India. They have not been given any compensation, just like the refugees from Pakistan. They have not been given monetary compensation or land compensation, because all the governments of India are still thinking they will liberate Pakistan occupied Kashmir and give those properties back. 3 generations have disappeared, but all the governments have been silent and not sympathetic to the refugees from Pakistan occupied Kashmir, including Mirpur, Muzaffarabad, Poonch, and many other places. And they are the ones who suffered most as compared to the Hindus and Sikh refugees from Pakistan. The number of people killed in Pakistan occupied Kashmir of Hindus and Sikhs is much larger proportionate to the population.
As Bal.K ji has presented the requirement that Pakistan occupied Kashmir Hindus and Sikhs need to be properly compensated, and they have suffered the worst under the Pakistani military and the Islamist Pathans. Thus, I hope this message reach our current government led by Honorable Narendra Modi ji, and of course there is a task force being set up for Pakistan Hindu refugees. Similar task force are to be requested for the Pakistan occupied Kashmir victims, Hindus and Sikhs, and other victims within those areas. I appreciate your requirement presentation, Bal.K ji, and thank you so much for your time. Namaste.
Thank you, Rahul ji, for your time, and I shared my brief history, which is forgotten by many people.
Thank you so much for updating us.